What's up, everybody? Welcome into the Horseshoe for the Monday after Ohio State 35, Rutgers 16, the 40-year vet Tim May. Andy Backstrom and I have all made our way back to Columbus, the greatest city on earth, from Piscataway, New Jersey, another city on earth. And we are here to break down Ohio State 35, Rutgers 16 after rewatching the entire game, or most of the game. Tim, I will start with you this time. I'm not going to waste any time. Sorry, Andy. I know I started with you on Saturday. Tim, I'll give you
You can start with yourself if you want.
No, your biggest takeaway, Tim.
My biggest takeaway was actually something that wasn't even in the game, was watching Tommy Eichenberg walk out of the locker room to the bus with a big, huge ice pack on his left forearm, forearm area. I think the last thing this team needs is to start losing more parts as this season, as I said, comes down to the nub. And obviously they played on Saturday without Denzel Burke and Lathan Ransom, two starters on that defense. And this is the game of football. Rutgers is that close to being in the, what do you call it, the upper level region of the Big Ten, I do believe, from a physical standpoint and everything else. They're still missing some parts, like a quarterback that can throw the ball consistently and things like that. But that was a second straight physical football game. Actually, third straight. What am I talking about? Penn State was a physical football game. So was Wisconsin. So was Rutgers. We'll see how physical Saturday night is against Michigan State. But that's my takeaway is this team is right there, I think, ready to make a move in all kinds of ways, but you can't be losing more parts.
I think the biggest takeaway rewatching the game is that, as Kyle McCord said, this offense is often one play, one block, one drop, one missed throw away from being truly explosive. And that's so frustrating if you're a fan watching this team, because you go back and you watch the game and you're like, well, hold on, Kyle McCord didn't play poorly. Hold on, this offensive line didn't play poorly. But at all times, it seems like one thing isn't quite right. And when that happens, you're going to have a failed third down conversion. You're going to have red zone issues. You're going to have a turnover like Kyle McCord's bad underthrown ball, quite frankly. He needed to layer it, and he didn't. So there's going to be those things that right now is still holding back this offense. And until they can all be in sync 99% of the time, we're going to have these games where it's when are they going to finally break away?
I've got to try to figure out what my big takeaway is, because I've got an offensive one and a defensive one. I guess we'll get to both of them regardless.
Hit them both, man, but in succinct manner.
I thought the Ohio State offensive line looks very clean. It looks concise. It looks like they all know where they're going, what they're doing. There were more guys getting to the second level than at any point this year, and that builds off of getting to the second level last week against Wisconsin, getting to the second level against Penn State to get that scrap for 79 yards there, getting to the second level against Purdue. They said they were simplifying things after Maryland. They simplified it, dumbed it down, and are now building on it, and I think that's super promising. On the other side of the ball, Rutgers was able to get to the second level because the Ohio State defensive line, in my opinion, played its worst game of the year, which hampered the linebacker play. Steele Chambers was taken out of plays because he was just caught in the wash because defensive linemen were not holding up their end of the deal. Tommy Eichenberg a little bit too, caught in the wash, and Rutgers was able to get downhill. It all starts on the line of scrimmage, and I thought on one side of the ball you had your best performance, and on the other side of the ball you had your worst performance. That's not to say the defensive line played poorly, and we'll get into that, but I just thought that the line of scrimmage was a mixed bag because we're so used to seeing the Ohio State defensive line play well and the offensive line kind of struggle a little bit. Instead, this week, we got the Ohio State offensive line playing really well against the stout Rutgers defense, and the defensive line kind of struggle a little bit with the scheme that Rutgers threw at them.
Yeah, bottom line is you give up over 200 yards rushing. That was legit. That was legit by Rutgers.
Yeah, it wasn't a fluke. Well, exactly. a little bit.
No, I said it was legit. Well, it wasn't a little bit. I mean, that little trick play they ran to keep the ball on that first down, where the center snapped the ball, the quarterback who handed it back to the running back, and everybody dove into the middle to stop the tush push or whatever they expected there. That was genius, in my opinion. Sometimes you just got to step back, even if you're Jim Knowles, and go, okay, you got me on that one. Yeah. Because they definitely did. The fact is they didn't score a touchdown on the play, and they ended up kicking a field goal. That tells you a lot about this Ohio State. I think I'm right about that. It tells you a lot about this Ohio State defense. As Josh Proctor said after the game, their motto is, if we've got an inch to defend, we're going to defend it. They forced 3 field goals in that game.
Inside the 5.
Exactly. The point is, this is a defense that when their back is against the wall seems to play extremely well, except Rutgers had four 4 moves into touchdown territory
Mm-hmm.
in that game and couldn't capitalize. That says a lot about the Ohio State defense, but it also says other things about the Ohio State defense. This was not a great day stopping the run, which is their first motto. We shall stop the run. And then after that, we shall drop back and cover and stop the pass and get pressure on the quarterback. And, a lot of that was missing. I mean, let's face it, if Wimsatt was a better thrower, they would have had maybe 2 touchdowns on big-time plays in the first half, And they did finally break the 40-yard barrier against Ohio State for the first time this year by any team. And that was Rutgers, and that was Rutgers' offense. I think Ohio State's going to see a better offense definitely at the end of the month than they saw on Saturday. So that would be a little bit concerning for me if I was in the Ohio State room right now.
Yeah, so let's start with the Ohio State offense, or Ohio State defense, because we normally start with offense on this show because it's the weak link of this team. When you just compare the offense and the defense, I actually thought the offense lifted the defense in the second half. I know Jordan Hancock had the pick 6, but Rutgers continuously moved the ball on this defense, even throughout the second half after the momentum had completely shifted. I was honestly a little stunned because we've just come to expect that from the Ohio State defense. But Andy, you want to say like win your worst game, and Ohio State won its worst game, I think, defensively.
Yeah, by 19 points.
Well, Ohio State on the defensive side gave up 16 points, and I would even argue that they gave up 13 because the field goal from the very stupid fake punt that wasn't, or it wasn't, was all on special teams in the offense. I don't pin that on the defense at all. So you give up 13 to 16 points in your worst outing. I think you're probably going to take that, but now you've got to go back to the drawing board and say, why was that our worst outing? What can we fix from there?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't think it was push the panic button kind of defensive performance at all.
No.
This Rutgers team was second in the Big Ten in rushing. They ran the ball well. I don't think we should be too surprised by that because, look, as much as Gavin Wimsatt struggles to throw the ball, he's a pretty good runner of the football, and I don't know why they didn't run with him until the second quarter. That is one thing I'm looking back at that game. Doesn't make any sense to me. But him and Kyle Monangai, who's also near the top of the Big Ten in rushing right now, he's going to go over 1,000 yards this season. Those are two pretty good runners when it comes to the rushing attack there. So I'm not super surprised. I'm surprised they got over 200, but remember, 45 of that was on that trick play. So there is that. But I'm not surprised they moved the ball on the ground. What's more surprising is the fact that there were some lapses in the secondary that just weren't fully exposed, as Tim mentioned, just some missed throws downfield. Christian Dremel, their walk-on slot receiver, I thought was great. And he exposed Jordan Hancock at times. And Jordan Hancock obviously helped flip this game with Josh Proctor with that pick 6.
Yeah.
But he also did not have a great day in coverage. Davidson Igbinosun back home playing against his brother. He had 7 targets, 5 receptions given up. He wasn't perfect either. And I felt like the secondary missing some parts back there with Denzel Burke out this week. Kind of a surprise that he did not play. And then you had Josh Proctor going out in the game after the pick 6. He was held out for protocol, concussion protocol, you would assume.
Yeah.
And Malik Hartford had to come in. So you had a true freshman in Jermaine Matthews playing on the outside, who they tested immediately but wasn't exposed on Saturday against Rutgers. And then you had Malik Hartford, another true freshman, playing in place of Josh Proctor at the safety position. And so there was just moving parts around. I thought Sonny Styles did a good job filling in for Lathan Ransom, but there were parts of the secondary that more concerned me than more of the rushing yardage given up.
Yeah. See, I like the way Sonny Styles played, with except for maybe a couple of plays, but he was very active. He was also playing smart. You know, they really didn't give up a play over the top, although there was one that was there that totally missed. But yeah, I mean, just everything you just said about the defense, I concur with. And it was a good learning experience for a couple of young guys in there, actually. But then all of a sudden you looked up, like you said, when Josh Proctor was out of the game, three of their starters defensively were missing in the secondary, and they still held sway for the most part when they had to. But even the touchdown was highly contested by Davidson Igbinosun, who claimed he thought he had the ball and ripped it out. But what happens on the ground doesn't really matter after a touchdown catch. But the bottom line is they competed all the way down the field. It's just they were exposed in a couple of areas. And like you said, Spence, the interior of the defensive line, which I think has been the stalwart of this defense, much less the defensive line, didn't have its best day.
No.
Then, when Rutgers went for it on that fourth down in goal line territory in the red zone, they collapse the pocket on Wimpstead. He steps up for that patented escape move he has, and as ordered, Ty Hamilton's right there and runs right over him and ends that threat. So there were some really good plays mixed in with some like head scratchers for this defense. So that's where I come from looking at this. I thought Cody Simon played pretty well. Like you said, Steele Chambers was battling a lot of times, battling blockers in his face before the play got to him and things like that. Those are things that maybe or maybe not can get cleaned up. But it was not as Spencer prefaced with, it was not the defensive line's finest hour.
No.
Hour, 60 minutes of football.
It was
3
not.
hours on the clock.
It was not Ohio State defensive line's best game. I'm going to definitely talk to Jim Knowles about that on Tuesday if I'm called upon.
Talk to him about it or scold him on it.
No, I'm just going to ask him what he thought of it because it was not good.
No.
And
he knows that.
And you want to see it continue to get better as you push toward Michigan. Michigan is not the rushing juggernaut that it was last year or the year before.
Let me say this, though. There was more defense played by Ohio State on Saturday afternoon in Piscataway than there was by Alabama or LSU or USC or Washington in primetime games on Saturday night. I will say that.
Well, because those defenses suck. And we expect this Ohio State defense to be good.
I looked at the camera like I just said something profound.
And we expect this defense to be good, and those defenses, all four of them, kind of suck.
Yeah.
So we're not grading Ohio State based on that. We're grading them on can you stop Michigan. And Michigan's offense, rushing the ball has not been what it has been the last couple of years. It's not your older brother's Michigan rushing attack. Blake Corum only had 55 yards against Purdue, where Ohio State...
They're playing Michigan State this week, not Michigan.
Everything we do right now is geared toward can it beat Michigan. And it can beat Michigan State. It can beat Minnesota. I have no questions. Can it beat Michigan? And the rushing defense from this past week is not going to cut it against Michigan. You've got to be better. And maybe I'm just making a mountain out of a molehill here, but it was concerning to see for the third straight physical matchup, and it showed because I thought Tyleik Williams, as good as he's been all year, just looked a little quarter step behind where he wasn't doing that. Mike Hall maybe just looked a quarter step behind. Ty Hamilton wasn't firing off maybe as good as he has been. That interior has played a lot of snaps for Ohio State, and I think it's going to be really wise for the Buckeyes. And this is me who has talked about playing time throughout the year and how the best players need to play. It's Michigan State and it's Minnesota.
You want them to rest now.
And I think
is that what you're saying?
I think you can do a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B with the rotations. Get Hero Kanu in there who's coming on. Get Ty Hamilton more run because he hasn't gotten as much this year compared to Mike Hall, compared to Tyleik Williams. Get maybe even a Caden McDonald involved in rushing down situations. Just those little things are going to keep this team fresh enough to go into Ann Arbor and win a game. I think
what's funny about that Michigan Purdue game? It kind of flipped when Purdue was called for a high-low block. What's that called? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The high-low block. When Purdue had gotten a first down and was coming out basically out of its end of the field, because Purdue was physically playing with those guys, like you're talking about. I mean, yeah. And Ohio State ends up beating Purdue worse than Michigan beat Purdue. Let's put it that way. But it is interesting how Michigan did not look like the juggernaut that it did even a week or 2 weeks ago, in my opinion. We'll get into that in a minute.
Yeah, we'll talk about that later because we'll have a little bit of...
Could be a reason for that.
We'll have a little bit of rivalry talk at the end. Andy, defensively, as we begin to shift toward the offense, just what'd you think of the rushing defense? Because, I'm in the camp that it was a little concerning. Tim, I think agrees. What say you, Mr. Backstrom?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't their best. And they gave up 361 total yards, which is their most they've given up all season, which you wouldn't expect typically from Rutgers on that schedule. But again, we have to keep hammering home the point that this Rutgers team is close, as Tim said. Like, they're close to closing the gap. Maybe not on Ohio State, but maybe that, second tier of the Big Ten. And
yes.
I think that's got to be promising for that program, considering this conference is expanding. And I think it actually helps them because there's no Big Ten East after this year. So they don't have to play Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan every year. So I do think this is a better Rutgers team. You need to constantly remind yourself of that, and they're good at running the football. I agree that the interior was not at its best, and I think part of that's fatigue. This is a team that's continuing to play every week after that Notre Dame game. We knew they had 8 straight weeks of games after that point. They've had 3 of the last 4 on the road. That's difficult. You go far west to play Wisconsin. You go far east to play Rutgers. You go from night game to noon game. There's a lot of factors here. I'm not making excuses for them. I'm just saying that it's fair to expect maybe a little bit more struggle against a very physical team in Rutgers that had an off week before this. So there were a lot of factors that I think played into this.
What you're saying is the Buckeyes are human.
Yes, they're human, and I'm not concerned by this rushing performance against, the defense's performance against this rushing attack. I think that, it wasn't their best, and it was probably, you could argue it was their worst, but I don't think it's something where it's going to happen again and again and again. That's kind of what I say about that.
And to summarize, Rutgers did what it does best, which is run the football, and netted 16 points out of it.
Yes.
That has something to say about this Ohio State defense when it got down in the red zone, how it stiffened and took care of business.
It also says something about this defense that Rutgers got down the field and ran the ball and got 8-9 yards a chunk at times, got 6-7 yards when it needed to, and then got inside the 5-yard line here as we're in the horseshoe, but that's at SHI Stadium. And Ohio State said no more. Because Rutgers there was a couple different goal line stands for Ohio State.
Kept drawing that line all the way down the field until they got to the 5.
Yeah, were really impressive stuff by Ohio State. The rub route that they ran to the sideline that Josh Proctor and Tommy Eichenberg snuffed out.
Yep.
The Josh Proctor on the quarterback run that probably would have been a touchdown had Josh Proctor not shot through the opposite side and got Gavin Winstat to the ground. So
Josh Proctor was having a game,
yeah,
ladies and gentlemen. In fact, his play when he got knocked out of the game was a great play.
Yeah.
And too bad to watch him have to leave the field.
So now we flip over to...
Wait, let me throw something in there. Isn't it funny how 5 yards doesn't look that much?
You got to stay close to the mic
I know,
there,
but
buddy.
I'm just saying, isn't it when you're down on the field, 5 yards doesn't look like much. 1 yard definitely doesn't look like much. And they defend it, wow. I mean, it's just amazing that you can keep a team from getting 1 yard.
Yeah, and that's where
It always amazes me.
That's where we flip here because Ohio State had 4 trips inside the 20-yard line as an offense, and heading into this game, 56% touchdown percentage in the red zone, simply not good enough. What'd they do? They pressed the Marv button in the red zone. They pressed the Travion button in the red zone. Hey, it worked. Travion Henderson had a 9-yard touchdown run that was really well blocked up, and they just moved people trying to get to the end zone. Then you had Marvin Harrison Jr. just skies up and grabs a ball that was perfectly thrown by Kyle McCord in the red zone, something we haven't seen him confidently unleash at times this year. Then the second time, he throws a back shoulder, perfect ball, Andy, to Marvin Harrison Jr. You're seeing this offense find its way in the red zone. I think that's a really promising aspect of this team going into the last 3 weeks of the year.
Yeah, I mean, you need to continue that because it can't be a one-off performance in the red zone. I thought, their first drive of the game was really promising. Or not the first drive, second drive, really.
Yeah.
They went 3-and-out on the first drive. But the second drive, you go and you score a touchdown. G. Scott has a remarkable touchdown catch. It was a great throw, maybe even better catch.
In the red zone.
14-yard touchdown reception. So I felt like, they finally got a little bit of a fast start, but they just couldn't continue it, and that's what Ryan Day said in the press conference after the game. He said, well, we did have that touchdown to G, but after that, it wasn't what they wanted. And you go back and you watch, well, why was it not what they wanted? And it's those mistakes, as we mentioned. There's a drop by G. Scott on 3rd and 5 over the middle of the field. If he had made one guy miss, he might have had a second touchdown on the day. There was a drop by Julian Fleming.
Right before the G. Scott drop.
Right before the G. Scott drop. There were times in which this offensive line, or maybe Travion Henderson, didn't pick up pressure. There was a sack. Mohamed Toure, who had a great game, actually, for Rutgers, their linebacker, came blitzing in. No one
had a good game.
Yeah, no one on the right side of the line picked him up. I don't know if that was Josh Fryer or Matthew Jones, or if it was Travion Henderson, who should have flipped to the other side to pick up the pressure, but someone didn't do their job right. Kyle McCord sacked. That drive is spoiled. So there was just constantly, as I mentioned in the open, one thing that would happen that would take them off course. And because Rutgers was playing this defense with two high safeties and that shell, as Ryan Day talked about, and then cloud coverage on the sides, the flat, they couldn't really use their receivers like they want to in terms of pushing the ball downfield. Kyle McCord only had 1 attempt of 20 or more air yards in this game, only 6 attempts of 10 to 19 air yards. They couldn't really do that. So if you're watching the game and being like, why is he not pushing the ball downfield? Why is he tentative? Well, it really was because they weren't giving him that. And so when you make the underneath throws and you dink and dunk, you don't have time to miss a throw. You don't have time for a drop. You don't have time for a sack given up, because you have to constantly be ahead of the sticks, and that's why I think some of those drives.
You have a photographic memory, don't you?
A little bit.
How many times was Marvin Harrison Jr. targeted in this game?
8.
Yeah. The best receiver in college football who can get open, even if us three are around him, you can throw the ball to him right here, and he could probably make the catch. Marvin Harrison Jr. was targeted way too few times in that football. No, there is no debate about it. This guy's it's like having the best running back in football, and you only give him the ball 9 times. I mean, let him take a shot. I think that was definitely lacking in this this play calling or this game plan, to now have Marvin Harrison Jr. much more involved as the primary receiver on things, because he will find a way to get open. Just like when they kind of tried to go clickety-clack right down the track before the end of the first half. Him a little cut-in move from the left side, cross over the middle where he makes the catch. Then they're targeting him on the interception because they're just trying to get down the field. So you go to your best receiver trying to get down the field. I thought that was a failing in this game, was how few times Marvin Harrison Jr. was targeted.
Well, there's a little bit of an explainer for it. I know he's the best receiver in college football, but you run him on a crossing route really early in the game, that really famous now mesh route that he's getting open on, and Rutgers, instead of being in man-to-man like you think they're going to be, it's early in the game. You don't realize they're running that much cover 2, which Greg Schiano is a Tampa 2 guy through and through. How'd you not see that come? But anyway.
I think they knew what was coming.
You run that, and there's a guy right there for him, so Kyle McCord can't throw it to him and has to go somewhere else. So there's a target that he didn't get that they planned on getting to him. There's another play.
You alter things, but my point is you alter things. You involve Marvin Harrison Jr. And I mean, there's always going to be differences in the way teams play you defensively. That doesn't mean Marvin Harrison Jr. can't get open.
But I think the point that I'm just trying to make is, like, they schemed things for him, and I think Rutgers did a good job of defending him. And I think Kyle McCord, to his credit, 17 of 26, a lot to his credit, did not force the ball to Marvin Harrison Jr. There are games where the guys, he's going to get covered. And I don't, there's the Indiana game, and it's weird because it seems to be against the worst opponents, but I know Rutgers has a good pass defense. You're getting ready to say, I know that. And so, you credit Kyle McCord for finding the guys that were open when he did and not forcing the ball to Marvin Harrison Jr. But in that exact same, on the same coin, just the other side of it, you flip it over and say, well, he should have had more targets to Marvin. It's a push-pull, a pin and pull that you've got to try to figure out, but you have to at least applaud Kyle McCord for not forcing it to him.
Yeah, I think 2 things can be true. One, as you kind of teased, Rutgers has the number 2 pass defense in terms of pass defense efficiency in the country coming into this game. So look, they're good at this. They take wide receivers out of the game. They make you run the football. They make you be patient, methodically drive the football down the field, which is what Ohio State did in the second half with a little bit of help. Travion Henderson expediting things a little bit there. But I also think you can get Marvin Harrison Jr. the ball without pushing it downfield or forcing it downfield. Like, there are ways to get him the ball from 0 to 9 yards.
Of course,
and we've seen that at times this season when they're trying to get things going, whether it's the drag routes, the mesh concepts, or even just the screens, the tunnel screens. Like, there are things you can do to get the ball in his hands, and he's been better after the catch this year than he was last year. I think I agree with Tim. Like, you got to find 10 plus every game, no matter what.
You look on your list there, and there's something there.
Right, and a lot of those targets came at the end of the game, right? Because 2 of them at least are in the red zone there for those touchdowns at the end. And so it's something where I agree. They need to get him the ball quicker. I also think they missed Cade Stover as good at times as G. Scott was, and especially that touchdown catch. Can't say enough about it. Still miss Cade Stover not having him. This is the second leading receiver on this team. Someone that Kyle McCord clearly has a great rapport with and likes to throw the ball to in the middle of the field. I think he opens things up for those receivers on the outside. I think not having him there, especially against his own defense, where there can be openings in the middle of the field, I think that hurt this passing offense on Saturday.
Yeah.
And it's a big question of when he'll be ready. It sounded like he was available, but I think they need him back as soon as possible.
Yeah, I think he could have played if he had to, just played tight end, also, though, a guy that got a lot of plays in that game was Carnell Tate, which is going to pay dividends, man. These last 3 weeks of the year is going to pay dividends for this offense. Julian Fleming, he must be, I don't know if he's banged up. It looks like he's banged up a little bit.
It does.
But he's not been that factor, And And the thing we're leaving out of this whole grand scheme that Rutgers had for Ohio State stopping his passing attack is we're leaving out the fact Emeka Egbuka was back. Emeka Egbuka was on the field along with Marvin Harrison Jr. a lot of the time on Saturday. And that should have created opportunities for one or the other to be maybe a little bit more spectacular. And for whatever reason, I tweeted this at halftime and this isn't a slam on Kyle McCord, but it just seemed like the offense was languishing a little bit, is the word I would use, being too careful.
Well,
and a couple of the throws, like one throw where Marvin Harrison Jr. was targeted deep down the right sideline where the string was pulled, and then I looked at the interception, of course, that ended the first half for Ohio State offensively. Both of those balls, I don't expect anybody to be perfect. Do not get me wrong. But those were opportunities, but especially the first one where he pulled the string out where Marvin Harrison Jr. had a step and a half, if you go back and look at it. I was saying conservatively he had a step, but he had a step and a half on that guy. But the ball was thrown short, knocked away, and there's a Marvin Harrison Jr. opportunity gone to the side when is a much better ball or a slightly overthrown ball would have been much better. Those are the things when you criticize Kyle McCord right now, that's what you're looking at, the fine points. The fine points add up to lack of consistency on offense as far as moving the ball down the field and scoring touchdowns. I mean, I think Ohio State at this point had 33 touchdowns going into the game, which was, down the list in the Big Ten. End up with 38 now, but one of those, of course, was scored by the defense. 3 of those 38 have been scored by the defense, which is remarkable in its own right.
Yeah.
This offense is not producing to this point like you thought it would.
But the problem is that when Kyle McCord...
I'm out of breath. Do we have any oxygen?
The problem is when Kyle McCord decided to uncork one and throw it down the field and be aggressive, a wide open tight end dropped the ball.
Yes.
Because that play, Kyle McCord had three options. He had a slant to the right, which was not open. He had a slant to the left, which was wide open to Xavier Johnson. And Xavier Johnson could have caught the ball, fell down, and gotten a first down, and the drive continues. And Kyle McCord, to his credit, sees an open G. Scott, and instead of being the conservative guy that he's being criticized for, he unloads one, plants on that bad ankle, delivers a bullet to G. Scott, and it's dropped. And those things happen. But
he was throwing to a wide open guy, so that's not really the argument about conservatism. Go ahead, Dan.
That's still a downfield passing that we haven't seen. And he stepped into a throw. He steps up in the pocket. He looks really smooth with it.
Agreed.
You see the potential. He looks like a 5-star. He delivers a dart.
Right there.
And it's dropped. And so that's my frustration. I don't want to say with the Ohio State fan base, but just with the conversation on Kyle McCord is like,
he's not the same as C.J. Stroud when C.J. Stroud left here. Now,
so,
here's the point I'm making, though. C.J. Stroud was always going to be on a learning curve this year. Always going to be on a learning curve.
You mean Kyle McCord?
Excuse me. What did I say?
You said
Kyle McCord. C.J. Stroud seems to have learned everything. Kyle McCord was always going to be on a learning curve this year. And I've always said that. But sometimes when you're on a learning curve, sometimes it's best to maybe step back for a possession or two and kind of see what's going on out there as opposed to being in the midst of it all. Like, you can see a hurricane a lot better from the outside looking in, and you can't stand it in the eye of the hurricane going, oh my God. That's the only point I was making. I wasn't by any stretch saying he should be removed as a starting quarterback at Ohio State because, number one, their next choice is hopping around on a bad ankle right now, and Devin Brown. Tristan Gebbia, he's there if you need him in a pinch, and Lincoln Keynotes. By the way, I would like to see Lincoln Keynotes play some in the next 2 weeks. I would like to see what he's all about. But my point is, everybody goes through these funky times when, like you said, you go from like being over bold to under bold to now you want to kind of be right in the middle and take what they got. And then when he takes what's thrown to him, what's given to him, which is G. Scott running wide open over the middle, the other end.
Well, and I think this game's tenor this game is much different if that ball is completed. Because
I agree, 100%.
Instead of the fake punt and a Rutgers field goal, you're probably looking at either an Ohio State field goal or an Ohio State touchdown.
I agree.
And it's either it's then either 42 or 45 or 41 to 13, and you are saying, okay, go Bucks, sing Carmen, Ohio, get back to Columbus. And instead we're standing here on the field and it's 35-16. You say, what the hell's wrong with Ohio State? So it's just a mixed bag, and I don't really know what else to say right now about this offense, Andy.
Well, yeah, I mean, look, you can
inconsistency. I think is the word.
You can cherry pick if you want, but look, Kyle McCord being patient and taking what's there is the reason why Travion Henderson had the game that Travion Henderson had.
Yes.
So on that play where you go 65 yards, catch and run, the only reason why that happened is because Kyle McCord was patient enough to just drop it into him and not try to force something against that cover two. And then Travion Henderson did what we all saw, which was basically evade 3 defenders, cut to the sideline, then teeter back inside, and then almost had a touchdown if it wasn't for a tackle from behind right there. And so he has just been remarkable the last 2 games, over 200 yards from scrimmage in both of those games, and just a complete difference maker. You could argue even maybe more than Marvin Harrison Jr. the last couple of weeks. And
yes,
I mean, they're both so valuable, you can't even compare. But look, he's been great, Travion Henderson has, for this football team.
Imagine you're in the military, you're like in the Army, and they all of a sudden they roll out in the midst of this whatever campaign you're on, they roll out this new weapon, this refreshed weapon, who's feeling extremely confident like Travion Henderson is. You're right. I mean, the only reason we're barking about the passing game is, number one, Ohio State only produced 1 touchdown in the first half.
Yeah.
They trailed Rutgers at Rutgers. But the flip side of it is the largesse of Ohio State definitely showed off in the second half.
Oh, yeah.
Both defensively and offensively. And that's what mattered the most. And Travion Henderson, I mean, I understand why Ohio State fans are a little bit, I don't know, gluttonous. What's the word you want to use there? Because they see the potential for the running and the passing game now. If they can both get on track at the same time, this offense can be what you thought it was going to be at the beginning of the year, especially with Travion Henderson back. And I understand their frustration in that regard.
It's a good conversation to have about Kyle McCord, but I think we're missing the forest for the trees here, because I did, and I'm going to throw it back over to Andy, but then I also want you to respond to him. Like, I thought this was a step forward for Kyle McCord, because he did not force the ball to Marvin Harrison Jr. because Rutgers covered it well.
I can see what you're saying.
He did not force the ball to Emeka Egbuka. Rutgers covered it well. Instead, he found G. Scott 3 different times. 2 of them were good catches, 1 for a first down, 1 for a touchdown, 1 on a drop. And I don't want to continue to pound G. Scott for that moment. Like,
no,
it does happen. It just happened in a bad moment for Ohio State in that moment. So, like, Kyle McCord, I thought, took what Rutgers gave him. And you said it best. Rutgers is really good at defending the pass. Kyle McCord took what they gave him. And you did what you had to do to win a game. And now you get 2 more tune-ups, glorified tune-ups, to get to Michigan. If I said that Kyle McCord took a step forward on Saturday, how would you respond to that?
Yeah, I don't think he took a step forward. I don't think he took a step back either. I think he just has been what he's been, and that's been good enough for this Ohio State team.
I shall stand here.
Yeah, and that's not to say he can't be better. I do think he can be, but he's got to have a game where he's completely clean of turnovers. He had fumbles issues this year. He didn't have one against Rutgers, but he threw an interception. That ball needs to be thrown with a little bit more arc over that linebacker right there and into Marvin Harrison Jr. He also, as Tim mentioned, underthrew Marvin Harrison Jr. down the sideline there. That's happened at times this season. So it wasn't a bad performance by Kyle McCord, and I think that it's easy to think it was in the moment, because you're like, why isn't he pushing the ball down the field? But then when you take a step back, you realize why. But I also don't think he took that step forward. I think we need to see a turnover-free game and maybe just a game in which he can play a defense that gives him a little bit more downfield. We can see him make those throws before I say he took a step forward.
In baseball parlance, you want to see a complete game.
Yes.
I mean, you're always going to throw a few. If you're a starting pitcher, you're going to throw some balls, but you want to see mainly strikes. Just not just strikes in the actual throwing of the ball, but in decisions made, etc. And I don't know if you ever get, like, for example, the interception. That was, here I am harping about Ohio State's Heisman Trophy candidate Marvin Harrison Jr. needing more targets. Well, that was a time when, if you watch the video, somebody else is wide open. He tried to force that ball because, push come to shove, you go to your best player.
Yep.
And so, as a starting quarterback, for the first time, you learn from all of these experiences, just like the one, the interception he threw, where was that? At Wisconsin. Toward Marvin Harrison Jr., where the cornerback came off of there. Basically, they dropped everybody deep and just made a flyer at it. He never saw that guy until that guy was intercepting the pass. You learn from all these experiences. And in my opinion, in the next 3 weeks, there is a great chance of this coming to fruition for Cal McCord, maybe at exactly the right time.
Yeah. If you want a cure for the common offense, buddy, do I have something for you? The Michigan State Spartans rolling into town. We cannot get out of here, fellas, before we talk about a weekly segment at this point, the Ohio State special teams. A fake punt, not fake punt, miscommunication, perfectly communicated and just not executed, execution or not, however you want to take the word execution.
I'm for it.
Thank you.
Wait, that's John McKay.
John McKay. Good. There you go. You got the joke, Tim. It's bad. It can't happen. And it keeps happening. And so Ryan Day declined to comment on it on Saturday because he was angry and he wanted to rewatch it.
He was
but
angry.
I do not expect him to take the high road and not comment on it moving forward. I think he's going to have to explain what the hell is going on with the special teams.
He said he'd tell us Tuesday.
Yeah, he's going to have to, because we're basically scratching our head like, why is this unit not, I don't want to say it's bad, because like Jaden Fielding's been pretty solid this year. Jesse Mirko's had some good punts this year. The kick return hasn't given up one, but it's been a little shaky. The punt return has been, they fair catch a lot of balls. They haven't turned it over, knock on wood. But like
Jaden Ballard's doing a hell of a job.
Every week, Tim, there's just something.
One gaff.
And you had it last year against Michigan, and you messed around and you found out against Michigan last year.
You made this R-rated.
I know.
You came that close, bud.
The chart says blank around, find out. And it's up here right now because it was up here on this very field against Michigan last year. Yeah. If you go up to Ann Arbor and have special teams issues, you're going to lose.
Yeah, well, there's a chance of that, but they could have them too, you know. I mean, it's the game of football. It's being played by 18. How old is Tristan Jebbia? 24.
Yeah. One team has had them all year, though. Is my
17
point.
to 24-year-olds. I know. I don't know how you cure not one time, but a blunder a game. You know, a lot of times it's a blunder. Who saw that ball bouncing off of Lorenzo Styles Jr.?
No, that can be excused.
Punt. Okay, but that was a blunder. But that happened. Whatever that was we saw on Saturday, looked like a fake punt, smelled like a fake punt. No, it actually smelled like a bad fake punt.
Yeah.
You know. But we find out it wasn't even called, maybe, or wasn't what was supposed to happen. Yeah, those are the ones that are curious to you, because that's either somebody going off the old reservation, so to speak, or what had they changed the signals? And they got the signals wrong, you know. I mean, half the team didn't get the signal.
Honestly, that's not the worst theory I've ever heard.
I'm kind of segueing into our next segment.
Special
teams. We're going to talk about signals, aren't we?
Very shortly, but yeah. Special teams, Andy, it's just not good enough right now.
Well, so with this play in particular, last year against Rutgers, if you guys remember, Jesse Mirko did actually run for a first down on the punt. But he was running to his right, which is what he usually does as an Australian punter. That's how they roll out and they kick.
Oh, there you go. And I see your tendencies.
Yeah,
go ahead.
So they're taught, if there's no edge defender, to just run for it and get the first down. That's what he did, no problem. That wasn't a fake punt. That was him seeing that, him taking it. Now, did he need to at that point in the game with a huge lead? No, but he did.
Was he going to punt left-footed?
Well, so that's the thing. This time, he runs to his left. That's not how he kicks it. If you're a righty, you're not going to run to your left and kick with your right. You're probably kicking the ball right out of bounds, right? So that's what's confusing about this, is that clearly he knew from the jump he was running. Because you see him catch the snap, he immediately starts to go left. Yeah. He never tries to go right. And Xavier Johnson's blocking for him, which and holds, called for a penalty there, uncharacteristic for him on special teams. So clearly there was something that they were going to try to do, and that's why I don't understand it.
Didn't your boys, Boston College, do that on Friday night?
Well, that was the case if no one was there, so we took it.
Right, I know. But I don't know why we don't see that more often.
Right, well, and that can happen, right? But this was not that situation because they did have players on the edge. Yeah. That's why Xavier Johnson was blocking that player on the edge.
Yeah.
But normally you take it if there's no player on the edge and you just get the first down easy. You don't need a blocker there. So that's why I don't understand this play at all.
Well, the other thing is, I thought if he cut up, he would have gotten the first down. You know what I mean?
Maybe, yeah.
I mean,
you don't want your punter in that situation.
That's why you want a running back there. You know, you don't want your punter.
Off tackle.
But if Travion Henderson lines up as the punter, you know.
Maybe he's got a boot. Who knows?
Hey, we saw a running back in the NFL kick a field goal yesterday.
Oh, yeah?
Just have Travion Henderson as your punter now.
Yeah, exactly. I'm sorry.
All right.
That's it.
All right, fine. We'll do it.
We'll get an explanation of that play for sure.
Yeah, we certainly will. Okay, fine. It's November. We'll talk about it. For the first time this year in Big Ten action, well, for the second time this year in Big Ten action, but not because of the opponent. That team up north, as you all viewers like to call them, the Michigan Fighting Wolverines, Michigan Spying Wolverines, did not cover against Purdue. Looked a little more pedestrian against Purdue. Still won 41-13. Gave up a touchdown in the final 20 seconds to make that 41-13. Would have won 41-6, and Ohio State won 41-7. So they were basically neck and neck against the Boilermakers.
Yeah.
It didn't look as clean for Michigan.
Nope.
It didn't look as predictable for Purdue, I guess I would say.
Yeah.
I wonder why that is. So it was. I'm not going to take this into a Michigan discussion because we're going to get out of here and go get to work. But Tim,
I was talking about Michigan is work.
You watched Ohio State against Rutgers. You watched Michigan against Purdue.
Well, parts, because I was flipping back and forth.
Yeah, but real quickly, what is your take on where Ohio State stands right now as it relates to Michigan? Because you watched them both.
You mean because of Signal Gate? Or
No,
because of
just
where they.
football.
I think this is going to be if everything's even. You know what I mean? Go into it and everybody's even and nobody knows each other's signals going into the game. Okay, I think this is going to be a hell of a game at the end of the month. I think Michigan is that. Just it's kind of like what I thought about Michigan coming into the game last year. They are a thorough, really pretty regimented football team that can basically line up and as the game goes on, run over you.
Yes.
Slowly but surely run over you. I felt the same way about Michigan last year at this time.
Yes.
And I thought it was going to take something remarkable by Michigan to beat Ohio State, which they got 5 ridiculous plays.
Yeah.
Crazy to even think about it now. But I feel the same way about these teams. I think Ohio State's going to get his stuff figured out offensively. I think Cal McCord, like I told you, I think he's going to be the quarterback you want him to be by that game. He's working on it in the background right there. He's hammering on it.
Yeah.
The bottom line is, I think this is going to be a hell of a football game if all things are equal. And we'll see what happens with Michigan and its leadership between now and then, whether or not Tony Petitti, the commissioner of the Big Ten, will step in and make some kind of ruling other than saying, okay, Connor Stalions left. He resigned of his own volition, and all is well. No, all is not well. Every coach in the Big Ten is concerned, quote, concerned about what Michigan had going for it for 2.5 seasons. And we'll see where that goes. But I think this is going to be a great collision of two juggernauts.
Yeah, clearly coach is not happy about it. Clearly athletic director is not happy about it. And, we saw the blow-by handshake with Ryan Walters. And
shout out to Ryan Walters.
Well, he was very open about it this week about how it wasn't fair.
Finally, somebody stepped up and said it.
Matt Rule has talked at times about it.
Yeah, he's danced around it.
Yeah.
Ryan Walters stepped up and said it.
Yes, he definitely was the most direct of all the coaches so far. Ryan Day, still no comment on it. I understand both sides of it. You've got a season to play. It is a distraction for not only Michigan, but every team in this conference right now.
Yeah, because it would be a long discussion if you open up that Pandora's box.
Yeah, absolutely. As far as what's on the football field, signals are not. I do believe this Michigan team is super talented. I think that they're a great defense. And I think that while, maybe you don't have that edge, which obviously is unfair, I still think they're a competitive team that could be in the CFP. And if they're allowed to play in the CFP. Now, that's a whole different discussion. But right now, they still are an elite defense. Ohio State also has an elite defense. I see a very low-scoring game in Ann Arbor. I don't know what the weather's going to be.
Yeah.
But that's why I think special teams, all those small details, are going to be so critical because I just don't see a shootout happening up there. I think it's going to be very close. And the other thing, too, with what we just saw at Rutgers, the ability to run the quarterback against this Ohio State defense. Now, how much of that was fatigue? Well, that's something to look at because J.J. McCarthy can run the football too.
Yeah.
And, I know that running back tandem hasn't been as good as people expected for Michigan this year. But when you can equate numbers in the run game with a quarterback, that could be an issue that I foresee, at least right now, after this past weekend.
Yeah, I think I think we're on a pretty good collision course here. I think Ohio State's got some things to figure out on offense. I think Michigan's got some things not really to figure out other than, how to stay on the course. I think Michigan has fully figured itself out. They just have to, they had every other team figured out, and now they got to refigure out every other team, if you know what I'm saying. So it's going to be one on the margins. And that's why it's not that I want to just, take a baseball bat to Parker Fleming every week on this field when we talk about this on the Monday after. But it's just the fact that, if you're going to beat Michigan, you're going to win with the little things and on the margins. And the offense is trying to figure out the little things right now. And the special teams, it's big things that you've got to figure out because you're just not getting it done. So, if you're tired of listening to special teams talk, and then they go to Michigan and have a special teams blunder and lose the game, you're going to say, hey, that's why we talked about special teams all the time. But if they get it figured out, then you might beat Michigan because you were good in every facet of the game. So,
the most important play in football is the punt. The most troubling play in football is the fake punt that goes awry.
I guess so.
You write that down.
But Ohio State and Michigan now on a true collision course. Michigan going to State College this week. Lettermen Row will be watching that game because it's at noon.
Oh, I thought we were going, man.
No,
you had me hanging there for a second.
If you want to, go ahead, Tim.
I don't want to fight that traffic.
No, I don't go to State College. It sucks. We'll be watching that game at noon, and then we'll be in this building at 7:30 on Saturday, up in that press box way atop the stadium. For now, we're going to go get to work. On Monday after Ohio State 35, Rutgers 16, Andy Backstrom, the 40-year vet Tim May, they'll both be at lettermenrow.com where you can get all of the coverage you want. $1 for a month. That gets you through the Big Ten championship game at this point, into the college football playoff announcement. The Buckeyes sitting at number 1 right now. We'll see where they are on Tuesday. We got Ryan Day on Tuesday. We got players and Ryan Day on Wednesday. A lot coming on Thursday, and then Friday bold predictions, leading into Ohio State, Michigan State at 7:30 on Saturday here inside the beautiful Horseshoe primetime showdown in mid-November. We've never seen it before. We're going to see it on Saturday, and we will see you there. But first, we'll see you at lettermenrow.com.